Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com, where you can find over 200 art and drawing tutorials and everything art related. Thank you for joining me today, and we're going to head on over to the art studio and do some drawings. I hope you'll grab a pencil and some paper and draw along with us today. I know you'll have fun. Let's head on over to the studio. All right, are we ready to look at how to use shapes to draw? So in this video, I'm going to cover a lot of different things because I really want to kind of cover all bases with this. So when we're talking about using shapes to draw, that means a couple of different things. It means using basic shapes as guidelines to help us form our drawings, get the proportions and placements right, and also to simplify more complex drawings. And using basic shapes is really a great way to get those first marks on the paper. Sometimes we get this blank page syndrome where you're afraid to make that first mark on the paper, or it feels too intimidating. It helps get some rough sketches out and get things laid out so it can start taking shape on your paper for what you're drawing. So it's really a good tool to use. The other thing we're going to look at is actually using the shapes to build out your drawing. So what I mean by this is things like a castle could be put together with rectangles and triangles, and or maybe a robot. You could build out a robot with just putting some shapes together. So we're going to look at both. We're going to look at drawing some objects using basic shapes to get our forms laid out, and also how to build out a drawing. And while we're talking about that, I do want to discuss real quick the difference between shapes and forms. And it's very simple. The only difference is that a shape is two-dimensional and a form is three-dimensional. So if you have a square or a rectangle, that's a shape. And then a form would be the 3D counterpart to that shape. So for a square or a rectangle would be a cube. That's a sloppy cube. But you get the idea, right? So you have shapes and you have forms. In this video, we're only going to be talking about shapes. So everything we're drawing today is going to be done in 2-dimension. So let's get started we'll draw some hearts. So probably most of us started drawing hearts way back early in elementary school, right? For Valentine's Day, or common with girls is you do like the letter I and the top is a heart, right? So we all learned how to draw hearts by doing one side, doing the other side, and making them kind of a mirror image, or cutting them out of paper. Today, I want to show you a better way of drawing hearts that you can make them more interesting to look at. And I have a couple examples, so flip this over so it's easier to see. So we have this one where the heart kind of curves in a little bit. And we have something like this where it's a little more stylized. You can still see the heart shape, but we have a more stylized heart. Or you can just have just a regular heart, but by using the shapes, you can make your heart do what you want it to do. So if you want it to curve around at the bottom, if you want it to indent up here, and we'll get some nice rounded shapes up here also. So I'm gonna be back in just a second. I'm going to go grab me some supplies, and we're going to look at drawing some hearts using shapes. All right, let's draw a couple of hearts by starting with some basic shapes so we can have our drawings look a little bit nicer than what we're used to from, like, say, like elementary school days. We want to make our drawings look a little bit nicer, a little more interesting. So one of the things that I love about using shapes for the drawings is that it really gets you over that blank page syndrome where you're just looking at that blank piece of paper or blank canvas and you don't know how to get started. So it's real easy because one of the things is that it will help with the placement and the proportions. So I know I want my heart to take up most of this piece of paper. And I'm doing this on artist trading cards. I do most of my work on artist trading cards because I enjoy trading them and I like having a little mini portfolio that I can store on my shelf and my drawings don't take up a lot of room. So this is done on an artist trading card. So I want to fill in most of this with my heart. I want my heart to be nice and big on here. So we're going to start by doing some basic shapes. I'm going to start over here. So this is where the top part is going to be. And I also want to make this heart uneven. I don't want it to be symmetrical. I want this side of my heart to be slightly smaller. And I want it to be lower than this side. You can make these circles, you can make them even, or you can make them different sizes. It doesn't really matter. It just depends on how you want your finished drawing to look like. And then we want to draw a line coming down for the bottom part of the heart. Again, if you want this to not come straight down, so one of the things that looks kind of nice with hearts is to bring this off to the side. And that helps make it a little bit more interesting to look at. So the next thing we want to do is we're just going to make out the shape of the actual heart. And you want your line to come around the top of the circle. That gives us a nice rounded shape up here. And then you're simply going to continue down here to this line. So come around your circle and over here to the line. Now I also know that I want to make this kind of indented right here, so I'm going to continue that down there. And then I'm going to do this other side, come right around the shape of this circle, and I'm going to curve it in a little bit to get that curve right here, and then bring that around. So by using these circles to get this basic shape of our heart laid out, it makes it easier to get these nice rounded shapes up here. If you're drawing a heart freehand, usually what happens is this shape up here isn't as rounded. You end up with kind of a funky shape up at the top. So this just helps you get it laid out. It helps with the placement, getting the proportions right, and getting those first marks on the paper. So all of these will be erased. And normally what I would do is after I outline my drawing, then I would use a bigger eraser and then go in and clean it up. But So there's our heart drawing. The next step is to outline and to add some color. So when doing your outlines, you can use, I usually use black. You don't have to use black. You could use red or purple or another color. You can use an outlining pen. I like these Sharpie outlining pens. You can use a bigger pen or a bigger marker and outline it with the marker. You could use one of these dual tip markers, has a little bit smaller point, or you could use a brush pen. And the advantage of a brush pen is that you can get some nice thick and thin lines just by using the one pen. So I'm going to go ahead and use my brush pen today, which is something that is on my list of things that I want to do. Is I want to get back in the habit of using my brush pen, because I used to use them all the time and I kind of got away from it. They do take a little bit of practice to get the good transitions of thick and thin. But what I like about it is that you get some good variation, which will make your drawings look a little bit more interesting. But it doesn't really matter. It's just a personal preference of what type of outline you like. Or maybe you don't want an outline at all. That's okay too, if that's the look you're going for. Which is why I like doing these on artist trading cards. They don't take a lot of time to do, so you have a lot of freedom to try some different things. So we have the outline done. The next step is to add some colors. So I'm going to go grab me some markers real quick and I'll be right back. All right, so when choosing your markers for your hearts, don't feel like you have to stick with the traditional pinks and reds. You could do any color you want. You could do purple, you could do green, you can do orange. And then what I do is I test out my colors on a piece of scrap paper. This is left over from cutting out my artist trading cards. I want my colors to blend together, and I like to pick 2 or 3 colors. Since this is just an open area of color, I'm going to use 3 markers today. So I'm going to use these 3 pink markers. You want a light color, a medium color, and then a darker color. And if you want to blend your colors, if you're using markers and you want your colors to be able to blend together for smooth transitions, then you need to make sure you're using alcohol markers. There's a lot of different brands out there. The best thing you can do is just experiment, try some different things. These markers are ones that my boss gave to me. She's seen them somewhere and picked them up. And there's quite a few markers in here. There's a decent selection. I don't know how much she paid for them, but you can usually get an entire set of markers fairly cheap. You don't have to go with like the Prismacolor or the Copic. Don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money on your markers. You just want to make sure they're alcohol-based markers so that they can blend. So the way I work is I'll take my lightest color and fill in the entire area. Even though I know I'm going to be adding in darker colors over top, I like to layer my colors. I feel like it gives me more flexibility with where I'm putting my darker colors at. And it's just my personal preference of how I like to work. You could also start with your darker colors first, if that's your preference. It's up to you. You'll have to just kind of play around with it. You know, like I was saying earlier, the artist trading cards are really nice because you could do several drawings in the same amount of time as what it would take you to do some drawings on a full piece of paper. Like if you were working in a sketchbook, then it would take you a lot longer to get these drawings completed. So you would be more limited on being able to take chances because you'd be afraid of ruining the drawing and wasting hours and having to start all over if you feel like it's messed up. So the artist trading cards are really nice because they don't take as long to make. If you try something and you don't like it, it's no big deal. You just try another one. So I'm just adding in some darker areas. Like I know right here this would create a shadow. I know that would be darker right there. I'm not really worrying about things like light sources and stuff like that. You can, if you want to consider your light source and you want to make it more realistic with your shading, that's up to you. I do my artwork just because I enjoy it. I enjoy the relaxation of it. So, to be honest, I don't put a ton of thought into where the shadows would be, where the light source is coming from. That's just not something that I'm interested in really working on. There was a time that I did. Back years ago, I really wanted to do realistic drawings and put hours and hours into one single drawing. And it really just kind of, for me, it led more to burnout than anything else. And I made the decision that I just want to focus on things that I find relaxing and enjoyable with my art. So the way that you blend these is by laying in your darker color and then going back with your lighter color and going over top of it where the two colors meet and blending them together. So the other thing you need to keep in mind is that as you layer your colors, they're going to change. Like if I put one layer of this lightest color down, it's going to look different than if I put another layer down. If I have two layers, it's going to be darker than just the one layer. So keep in mind that as you work back and forth with your colors, it's going to change the way the colors look a little bit, which you'll get used to that. And really the only thing you need to do is to make sure you're working while the marker's still wet if you want your colors to blend together. So you can just go back and forth with your colors from your darker to your mid and your light. So I think that's it for the heart colors. I don't think I want to do too much more. Sometimes your paper can get a little too saturated and it makes the colors a little bit harder to work with. And also sometimes these cheaper sets, you don't get as good of a variation in your colors. Like I would like something a little closer to this darker color to help transition that a little bit better. For the way I like to work, I don't like these harsh edges right here. So I'm going to go in with that color, blend that a little bit right there. But don't feel like you have to use pink or purple or red for your heart. experiment with some different colors, try some different things, see what you like, what you don't like, and just kind of play around with it a little bit. So now we need to do a background. If you don't feel like making an entire background for your drawing, you can just do some color, like you could do a color border around the edge. You could do color around the heart. I really like this, this blue color. This is one of my favorite markers for adding an outline. I like the way this color looks. So when you're doing your backgrounds, you have a couple of choices. You could do some kind of scenery in the background. You could do some abstract designs. You could color it in solid. You could do just some color gradation in the background. A lot of times what I'll do is fill the background in with a lighter color or a mid-tone color, and then just on the edges do a darker color and blend them in. That's an easy way to do a background. Just adding this, I call it a halo, around the image will break up this background a little bit and make it look a little nicer, make it look a little less of a heart floating on your paper. So it just adds a little something to it. Finishes it up a little bit, makes it look like a finished piece of art instead of just some random heart floating on a piece of paper. The other thing you can do is with a jelly roll pen, a white jelly roll pen. These work really, really good for going over top of markers. I like to add some white highlights just to break up these big areas of color. You could also go in with some gray or darker colors, or maybe like a black colored pencil, and add some darker shadows in here if you wanted around the edge. But that's it for that one. Using the shapes just makes it a little bit easier to see where you're going and where your finished drawing's gonna end up. So that's it for the heart. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful, and I really hope you feel motivated to experiment and try some different styles of hearts instead of your basic heart drawings that you learned in elementary school. Try to push yourself a little bit and see what you can do with it. So another drawing that is very simple to do and easily illustrates using the shapes are these gnome drawings, and we have an entire video on drawing the gnomes. So I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but I did want to just kind of touch on it real quick to illustrate how using these basic shapes to lay out our drawing can be helpful. So for these gnomes, it starts out with a circle. That's a circle for your head. And then you do a triangle for the hat, and then a triangle upside down for the beard. And this gives you a good starting point. The hat's not going to be a triangle and the beard's not going to be a triangle. But that's the closest shape to what it is going to be. Then you just start adding in your details. So I like putting the nose right under where the hat goes. And then you want to start defining where the hat's going to go and what it's going to look like. So you can add, and you can put any kind of hat on your gnome. And these are a really, really easy drawing to do if you're new and you're not real confident or comfortable with your drawing skills. So I can put these different bands of colors up here. And all I'm doing is following this triangle shape and using it as a guide so that my hat gets smaller and smaller as it goes up. And then you could maybe do like a little pointed top on it. And then when you do your colors, you could do these different alternate bands of colors. So you have your hat, and this is kind of just a strange sort of hat, but something a little different from what you might typically, or how you might typically draw your hat, I should say. So very quickly we have our hat all laid out, the shape's already there. And then for the beard, we want the beard to come down more narrow at the bottom. We're not going to worry about this head shape at all. It's going to be completely covered up. But it gives us a spot to place the main section of the drawing where we want that to fall on the paper. And then for your beard, you can add some little indications of clumps of hair. And you can do your beard however you want. There's a lot of different ways that you could draw your beard out. You can experiment with some different things. And again, I'm just following this indication of this upside down triangle to help guide me to come down here to this point. And then I like for the gnomes down here, I like to just put a couple of shoes sticking out. You can do yours however you want. So again, you get the basic shape down there and then add whatever details you want to add in. If you want to add some laces, you could add some laces down here. That's up to you. You could put some legs. You could put some little indication of legs in here. You could add arms. You could do whatever you want. These lines are going to be erased. You're not going to see that shape of the head at all. That's just for placement. And then that's it for the gnome drawing. But using the basic shapes for your guidelines makes it really quick and really easy to just get everything laid out. It gives you a map to work on so you know where you're going with everything. And you're not trying to make all these decisions as you're working. So that's the gnome. Again, there's an entire video on drawing the gnomes, and that includes the outlining and the coloring, so I'm not going to include that here. And then we will look at using shapes to actually draw out some images. So let's look at how to draw a robot by building it out with just some basic shapes. So our basic shapes are rectangles, squares, circles, triangles. And remember that shapes are two-dimensional. So when drawing your robots, you're going to want them to be mostly symmetrical. So we can draw a line of symmetry right down the center of the paper. And if you wanted to, you could also divide it in half this way, just to give you an idea of that's where the center point is. And this can help you to get some idea of where everything needs to go on your paper. I like starting with the body piece for his chest. And you can do that with a square, a rectangle, you could do a circle. But building out these robots, you can do them just by putting any kind of basic shapes together and then going from there to add in your details. So this is going to be the body. The head, we want a little bit of space. I'm going to do another rectangular shape, and I want a space between there for the neck, and I want the head to be smaller than the body. Now this is just how I'm designing my robot. You could do yours completely different. You could have the head bigger than the body. I'm doing mine on an artist trading card. And one of the things I really, really love about the artist trading cards is that it gives you a lot of opportunity to experiment and try new things. So now I want to put the legs down here. These are going to be my center points for my legs. And then I want to do lines on either side of those. And I'm just doing long rectangles right now, but I might break those up a little bit, add some different details in here. I can do circle shapes for the feet. And then for the neck, again, I'm going to use this line of symmetry to get it fairly close to even. And then I might put some little oval shapes down here for the neck. You might put a couple rectangles off to the side that look like ears, or maybe these are lit up. Maybe these are glowing. Gonna add some eyes. The mouth, I like just making just kind of like a rectangular, sort of like a slit for the mouth. And then for this chest piece, you can do whatever you want. You could make it look like a screen. You could put, sometimes I put a heart in there. You could make it look like some kind of an instrument panel. Maybe make it look like an old school boombox might be kind of cool. Maybe it's a party robot, who knows. So for the arms, I'm going to put some little rectangles in here where the arms can connect to the body. And then I'm just going to have them coming straight down with some little circular shapes for the hands. Don't stress out too much if your drawing doesn't fit completely on your paper. These are things that I used to really be bothered by in the past, and I've kind of learned to not worry about it. I would rather my drawing take up this whole area here than to worry about every little piece of them fitting within the size of the paper. So in reality, it doesn't hurt anything if the hands go off the edge. So I just put some little rings down here, little oval shapes, and curve them around. Got the shoes. You could probably put maybe some kind of a, like some circles here to show the joints in the elbows. So as you can see, we're just building this out with just some shapes. I'm going to put some triangles up here with circles at the top. And then we're not going to see this tip. So as you can see, we're just using basic shapes, nothing complicated. But when we're done with it, we have a pretty interesting drawing just by building it out with some basic shapes. And then all these guidelines will disappear after we outline it and clean it up. So I got my outlining pen. I like using these black Sharpies. You can use whatever you want. And I'm just going to go right over top of all of the lines that I'm keeping. So if you're worried that you might go over the wrong lines, like I have these lines of symmetry in here, you can erase those if you're worried about accidentally going over top of something you don't want to keep. Or you can leave them there, do your outline, and then go in and erase them. That's what I do. I leave all those extra lines in there. And then I go over everything with my outlining pen, and then I take a big eraser and clean everything up. When you're doing your outlining, you can add some variation in your line weight by maybe going back over top of them on the bottom where there might be shadows. You could go in and add some hatching or cross hatching for some shadows. It just depends on the look that you're going for and how you like to work and what your style is. Everybody has their own personal style, and that just means you do the things that you think look good, which doesn't necessarily mean everybody likes that, but that's what makes it your style. Your artistic style is a combination of all the different things that you like and that you think look good. So that's what makes it your personal style, because everybody's not going to agree with you about what looks good. Like I'm going in here and adding some shading underneath there. You might look at that and absolutely hate it. So if that's the case, then that's not something you would do. Maybe you like something different. Maybe you don't like the black outline. I personally like the black outline. So, of course, when I do my drawings, I'm going to add a black outline. If you're somebody who thinks the black outline looks terrible in drawings, then you're probably not going to do that. You might do something different. Maybe you don't like outlining at all. These are all just personal preferences that when you combine everything together is what creates your own artistic style. So I'm just showing you one way of doing something. And then the idea is that you will work on these things on your own and experiment, try new things, and develop your own style. And just use the tutorials as a starting off point, and then just seeing where it takes you and what you end up with. And that's also why I like doing these artist trading cards, because they save a lot of time. And I like doing a series of drawings. So typically if I'm working on robots for the week, I'm not going to draw one robot and then call it done. I'm going to try to push myself to do a series of 7. I like doing 7 drawings. And the reason I like doing 7 is because I don't feel my creativity really start to take off until about the 3rd or 4th drawing. At about 3 or 4 drawings, I start feeling a lot more creative. So I like doing a series of them so that I can feel that transition in my creativity. So doing the artist trading cards makes it really easy because they save so much time. So now we need to add some color. I'm going to cut off for a second here, grab me some markers, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got my markers. I decided I'm going to try doing a purple robot, which is not something I would normally do. I think purple's kind of a weird color for a robot, but I figured, hey, why not? Try it out and see what it looks like. I usually think of robots as being usually like red or grays. I don't know why. That's what I think of when I think of robots. Purple is not a color that I would normally think of for a robot. These markers that I'm using are just, I think they were purchased at maybe like a craft store or something. They're not the best markers. They don't have the best range of color. I don't like how those are blending. I don't like how they're blending, and they're bleeding outside the line, which doesn't, oops, dropping markers, which that doesn't thrill me. So you really have to experiment with the markers that you're using and figure out what you like and what you don't like. So for example, these markers bled a little bit outside of the outline, which isn't a huge deal. I can just go back in and darken up the outline. It's not gonna, that won't ruin the drawing. So these markers must have more of the alcohol in them. They must have a higher concentration of alcohol. But you don't know how the markers actually work unless you try them out. So these are ones that I haven't really used a whole lot, mostly because they're too limited with the colors that are available. Like these purples, there's only 2 purple in there. And there's too much of a difference between them, so they don't blend real well together. So I'm just going in, I grabbed another marker out of my collection. I have tons of markers. So we're just gonna improvise, do the best we can. As long as you don't go over, back and forth over the colors too much with those ones, they seem to be okay. It looks like I just have to be careful that I don't oversaturate the colors. I don't think I'm real crazy about how these colors work together. But it is what it is. Who knows, maybe I might come up with some kind of cool effect from it. It's kind of like a tie-dye looking vibe going on, which isn't bad. Like, that doesn't really bother me. It's kind of an interesting effect going on. So one of the things that I've really been working on over the last few years is not getting discouraged by how things turn out and if they don't turn out exactly the way I want them to. And the reason that I'm working on that is because I want to feel like my art time is as relaxing as it can possibly be. And if I'm worrying about things that don't go exactly right, I am not going to be relaxed. I'm going to feel tension. I'm going to feel kind of uptight about things. And that's not my goal for my artwork. My goal, my sole purpose for creating my artwork is to feel a sense of relaxation and enjoyment. And I can't feel those things if I'm constantly worried about, well, this didn't work out the way I wanted to. That don't look the right way. And I used to be like that. I used to really, like, the past me would have tossed this out and started over and said, yeah, no, this didn't turn out the way I wanted it to do. It's garbage. We're going to junk it. This is no good. We can't have this. This isn't perfect. And really all that did for me when that was my approach to my artwork is that I ended up getting discouraged and then I didn't work on something. So if I would have felt like this was ruined because I didn't like how these markers are working, if I would have felt like everything was ruined and, okay, I'm going to pitch this one, I'm scrapping it, we're not even going to finish it, chances are what would have happened was I would have abandoned this drawing. I wouldn't have finished it. And then there's a good chance that I wouldn't have started over. I probably would have felt discouraged and thought, you know what, I'll try again. I need to take a little break. I'm stressed out. This bothers me. I'll come back to it later. And then we all know what happens. Later never comes. Because how motivated are you going to feel if you say, okay, I already did this once, so first of all, you're trying to recreate the same idea that you had to begin with that didn't work out. And that's not a whole lot of fun doing the same thing twice. Like, I don't know, who really wants to repeat the exact same drawing because the first one, something got messed up on it. So in all likelihood, the project would be abandoned and that would be the end of it. And it would never get worked on again. But if something doesn't turn out exactly the way that you want it, like, I don't know how much this is picking up on the camera, but he looks like he's got like some kind of a beard or something going on there. But as I'm working, I'm thinking about what are my options to fix that so that I don't have to abandon this and just say, oh, that got ruined. That's no good. And that particular problem, I don't feel like is a huge deal because I'll just go over it with my black. I could always add on a heavier outline if I wanted to. But I think it's important to just keep pushing forward because my goal is to just enjoy creating my artwork. And for me to do that, I have to focus on the process and not on the outcome. If I'm always focused on the outcome and I have really high expectations for how everything's going to turn out, to me, that just creates stress. That doesn't create a relaxing environment for me at all. If I'm always worried about everything has to be perfect, I don't want anything to go wrong, to me, that's stress. That's not relaxing. And the reason I create art is because I enjoy it and it relaxes me. But if I start creating an environment for my artwork in my creative time that is stressful, first of all, I'm probably not going to do it, because who wants to create stress for themselves? But also, if I do participate in some creative endeavors, I'm not really going to enjoy it if I'm stressed out about it all the time. So the idea for me, and I think for most people who are hobby artists anyway, the idea is to create a stress-free and relaxing environment. And the way we do that is just by focusing on the process itself and not on the outcome. So one of the reasons that I like using this outlining pen, even when I do a heavier line weight, I prefer this pen because, for one thing, it doesn't bleed into the paper, where a lot of the markers, if you're using it for your outlines, it doesn't make as sharp of an outline because it tends to bleed into the paper a little bit. The markers bleed a little bit, not as bad as like what that did. That just got oversaturated. But these will make a nice crisp edge, and I don't mind going back over it and reworking the line weights with this thinner pen, because I find this very relaxing. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about doing this, but it's very therapeutic to me to just go back over and make a thicker outline using the smaller pen. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. And oftentimes I think, this is silly. I'm wasting a lot of time. This is taking me a lot longer than what it needs to. But at the same time, I'm not trying to rush through everything. And to me, what I'm doing right here, going in and adding a darker outline, I find very relaxing. So I try not to stress out about it too much. So I got the darker outline in. I think it looks okay. If I had to do it all over, I don't think I would use those colors. I learned a lesson about the markers. And these, like I said, these markers are ones that were given to me as a gift. And I want to try using them because, number one, I wanted to give them a chance. And I don't know where she bought them at. I want to say she probably bought them at like Hobby Lobby or something. But these markers and these ones, which are more of an artist grade, and these are more of like a kid's marker or a craft grade marker, these don't do like how that did. And like this one, as you go over top of it, it really oversaturates the paper and then it bleeds a lot more. These markers do not oversaturate the paper. So this was actually a very good learning experience for me, because I'm not doing illustration work, so I don't care a whole lot about, like, I don't get Copic markers because I think they're too expensive. And I have a couple. I bought a couple just to try them out and see, like, you know, what's the big deal with them. And for me and the type of art that I'm working on, I don't see where the price is justified for me personally. But I'm not doing illustration work. I'm doing just, you know, stuff for my own personal interest, just for relaxation, just because it's something I enjoy. So I can't really justify the extra expense. But you also have to know what your limitations are as far as going inexpensive in trying to figure out what type of markers you like, what markers you don't like. So I'm just breaking up some of the chunks of color with this white jelly roll. And it's, the way I work is, it's fairly arbitrary. I'm just putting some random white highlights in here just to break the color up. So now I can do something with the background. You could put a scene in here. You could draw like some kind of, maybe like an industrial, I don't know, you could do like a little junk heap. You could do something, I don't know. I don't know what else you could do in the background. I'm not the best at backgrounds. There's something I've struggled with quite a bit. I should probably go through my binder that I have from other artists and see what other people have done for backgrounds. Because I'll get some cards that people have made and their backgrounds are interesting but still kind of simple. So I really should go through some of my cards that I've gotten from people and steal some ideas for different backgrounds to make. You can get these colorless blenders. They usually come with the sets. And what you can use them for is to kind of blend out these colors and soften them up a little bit. Again, these markers tend to oversaturate, so they don't work the best. It's actually removing the marker, and it's making it kind of blotchy looking. Which, if you use like these markers, they won't do that. It'll lighten it. So I'm gonna go with it because this isn't what I would normally try to achieve, which right now is kind of a good thing because I need to play around with some different textures and whatnot for the background. So we're gonna go with it, and we're gonna make it that kind of blotchy look to it, which actually doesn't really bother me. So there we go. There's our robot that we build out with just using some basic shapes. And you can try different things. You could do circles for the head, circle for the body. Experiment with some different shapes, try it out, and see what you can come up with. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to building out drawings with shapes is the castles. And there's a lot of different things you can do. You could do cities, you could do all kinds of things. The castle works really well for just building it out with shapes. And I'm not going to do a step-by-step on this one. It's pretty straightforward. So basically, I started with a rectangle for the main part of the castle. Then taller rectangles for the towers. Triangles for the caps. The roof, I don't know what you would call those. And then I just added some different details, some rectangles up here. And then added the brick and the stuff in the background and the foreground, a little bridge and whatever. But the basic construction of this was just rectangles and triangles. So it's pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to go step by step through this. I think you get the idea of it. But I just wanted to show how you can take some basic shapes and build out your drawings. And by the way, I want to point out, what does Bob Ross say? Bob Ross always said, happy accidents, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents or something like that. I actually kind of like how this texture looks in this background. Like I said earlier, that's not a look I would have normally gone for, but it's actually kind of cool. I like how it almost looks like some trees or leaves or something. It's kind of a cool effect. So I just wanted to point that out. Don't abandon your art. Keep pushing forward, keep working on it, and just see where it takes you. So we have couple different drawings. I don't think I've done anything else where you actually build out the drawing just by stacking up different shapes. I looked around, I looked through some of the stuff I had. These are the only two examples that I could find. One of them, another one is maybe the Cubism portraits. That's not really building out with the shapes, but it does use the triangles and the rectangles and the different geometric shapes to break up the face for the cubism. So that would be maybe another way to use the shapes for your drawings. And again, there's tutorials on all these things. I don't have a video on the castles, but there is a blog post on the castle at artbyro.com. And that's it. So try using some shapes. Use the shapes to lay out the construction of your drawings like we did with the heart and the gnomes. Or really anything. I wanted to show you some simpler drawings, but you can really use them to your benefit by doing more advanced drawings. And then just how to build out an actual drawing just using some basic shapes, which makes it really easy, not a lot of pressure, and great for beginners. So I hope you like this video and give it a try. Well, how'd you do? Did you make some of your own artwork? I hope you did. I hope you felt encouraged and motivated to start some of your own work. And I hope you feel inspired to keep working on your art. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like and make sure you subscribe so you can see more videos from us when they get posted. I'll talk to you soon. Happy creating!